I want to welcome everybody to the March Ion Piscataway, and we do in this segment, I have the Director of Piscataway Recreation Department, John Tierney, on, and working in conjunction with our Township Landscape Architect, Henry Hinterstein, who's not on the show here, but John working closely with him. We do have some renovations that are going to take place in several of our parks this coming spring and into early summer, as we're going to see. So John, I think what we're going to do is go through the list of some of the parks that are going to be renovated and what people can expect out there in those respective neighborhoods. And we do have 26 municipal parks in town, not including the new ecological park. But typically, most of them are neighborhood parks, and that's what makes Piscataway so unique with all these neighborhood little parks. If you go to a lot of the other communities in central New Jersey, they have a lot of big mega parks, but they don't have these little small pocket parks or neighborhood parks that we do. And I think that's what makes our park system a little bit more unique in central New Jersey compared to other communities.
I would absolutely agree with that, Mayor. In the towns that I've dealt with over the past 2 or 3 years about renovations with things, you notice, yeah, that's exactly the case. They have these big giant mega parks and no small neighborhood parks. I know you're a big proponent of the 10-minute walk to park.
And we signed on to that challenge
that
it was through the National Parks and Recreation, that if there should be a park within 10-minute walk for exercise.
Right, and as far as I know, you can go anywhere in Piscataway, and within 10 minutes you can walk to a park.
Yeah, or a walkway.
Correct, or a walkway, yes.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do, most of the work that's going to be done this year is going to be on the south side of town, south of 287 towards the Edison border, Highland Park border. But I guess what we'll do is we'll start off, I think Kroger Park is going to get a little facelift there. So what can people expect out over there?
Well, what we're going to do over at Kroger is we're going to renovate the basketball courts and the tennis courts. And when I say renovate, it may just be as simple as new color coding, new nets, new posts, new backboard, new rim. Or if the base coat of blacktop needs to be replaced, that's milled out, re-leveled, repaved, and then color coded. And you want to do that probably every 10 to 12 years. And then you get away with color coat for 3 to 5, depending on how much use it's going to get. And obviously weather factors a lot into it as well. But you'll see a lot brighter colors on them now, because as the years go, they fade a little bit. So people can expect that it'll look brand new, even if it is just color coded.
Yeah. Now, I noticed, especially over at Kroger Park, on any given weekend or even late weekend, especially during the summer, you have a lot of adults going out there having pickup games.
Oh yeah, that's
it's
probably
one of the primary pickup basketball games in Piscataway, other than say Columbus Park off of 12th Street and that basketball court.
Yeah, Kroger, because of its location, has always been one of the hot spots for pickup basketball games. And anybody that's been around Piscataway long enough, and Mayor, I know you have certainly, that court has produced an NBA player and another player who also went to play on in Europe. So Justin Bailey and John Celestin both grew up playing on that court.
Yep, which is ironic right there. And that's what we always pride ourselves on. Hey, it starts in the parks.
Exactly.
But I know one thing, and I don't want to give you agita or a Henry Hinterstein agita, but one of the things before we were coming on set, I would like to see done possibly in 2023 is we do have a tot lot, Deborah Drive tot lot over there. And I did mention to Henry Hinterstein that we're going to have to look to build a parking lot there to make that a little bit more handicap accessible for that playground there. I do know that there's some folks that are handicap accessible, and historically it was you just pull up to the at the curb and then go in. But now I think we're at a point now we need to actually maybe put 10 parking spaces there. We have the room to do it. We should go ahead and do it and make it more accessible.
Right, and I agree that it's time that a parking lot probably goes in there, because that area is, as anybody who hasn't been involved with municipalities knows, houses get sold, new families come in with young kids. Well, that's now a young kid area again. Yeah. So I think putting a nice parking lot in there would certainly help out. And if you don't mind me going in with this, it also can help the fire department out as well, because they're right across the street. gives them a little extra parking when they're coming to the firehouse in an emergency. Gives them
absolutely.
spaces to park.
But also, we do have a paper street that actually connects up both parks that for the last 40 or 50 years, it was a little walk path in the woods. So I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to have Henry design something to do, maybe a 10-foot wide multi-use path to go on there. So where the bicyclists, if we're going to do a parking lot out there in 2023, we naturally want to connect up into Kroger to all the assets in Kroger, whether it be the basketball courts, the tennis courts, or the ball fields.
Correct. And I think that's a wonderful idea.
Because it really would set the tone, sort of like what we renovated over at Perrine Park on the other side of Rivercrest Drive. Now there's like a 10-foot wide multi-use path around the outer perimeter connecting all the assets up. And I think that would really send a strong signal out there to the neighborhood. Hey, we want you to not only use the parks, your neighborhood parks, but more importantly, we want you to be healthy while you're using the parks. So.
Yeah, I think a path like that meets a lot of goals that we would have. Again, getting people out, getting them more into the parks, and being able to utilize the entire park, especially in a park like that that's spread out the way it is.
So a little further down, there's another historic park, so to speak, which was part of the old Holmes Marshall grade school back in the day, but that's another basketball court that's going to get renovated and is heavily used by a lot of middle schoolers.
Yeah, that court definitely gets a lot of use. Early spring, you'll see them out there at night until it gets dark. They're out playing on those two courts there. And it's not 10 or 12 kids out there. It's 30 or 40 kids out there playing. And you see them out there, and they're having a great time. So renovating that court, again, same idea. Color coding, new baskets, nets, everything will be done and it'll look nice and new. Maybe some adjustments to the fencing over there to make it, sometimes I've seen a few of the kids shoot, they shoot a little bit like I do, I guess, and the ball goes over the fence. Then they're running out in the street. Maybe we'll lift the fence up a little bit.
Yeah, and we were, once again, this is one of the other items we were speaking about before coming on the air, that that section on the park side doesn't have curbing out there. I think we're going to have, when we get to that point next year, we're going to take a look at possibly putting some curbing in and maybe hire the fencing up there as part of that contract out when we renovate the parking lot.
Right, and it's close to what we did at Columbus Park last year. We changed the fencing a little bit so the ball, is, if you shoot it poorly, is less likely to end up in the street, less likely to have any type of incident there then.
Well, and the reason why Director Tierney's talking about that is because tendencies with children that are playing the basketball, as he said, that they're going to shoot and the ball inevitably might go out into the street. So if we have a little higher fence out there to prevent that happening, that's the last thing. When a parent lets a child go to the park by themselves, you want to make sure that all safety measures are in place as best we can. Right.
We can't prevent everything, but we can prevent a lot of things. Yeah. And we, in Piscataway, of course, with the mayor's help, we've been able to do that with our parks.
Yeah. Now, not too far away from there is Perrine Park. We've done some major expansions there. So why don't you explain what the next phase is?
The next phase there is to revamp the roller hockey rink. And as I say roller hockey rink, it can be played regular street hockey in there, roller hockey. People can just go in there and rollerblade if they want because it's a nice smooth surface. Again, it's color coded, a little bit different than the basketball courts. The blue we use on it actually makes it look like it's ice. And then you have the red lines and all the other markers.
And isn't that done so like during the summertime with the glare that it's not as bad on your eyes?
Yeah, it keeps the glare down. Many years ago when we put in our first roller hockey rink, we just painted it white. Yeah. And that was not one of our better ideas. Yeah. We had to come back the next year and cover it with some darker paint because the glare coming off of it was difficult. But now with these new rinks, and they have the boards and everything, the padding, that'll all be redone and looking, again, back to when it was brand new. 15 or 18 years ago.
15 years ago. That was one of the first hockey rinks that we installed in town.
It's held up well for the years. I mean,
it has.
The investment was well worth it.
No, the town got its money's worth out of it in the usage where a lot of people stole. And there again, you do have a lot of teenagers use it, but you also see a lot of adults using the hockey rinks, hockey enthusiasts that are actually going and using it.
Yeah, they go in it, they'll They work on their hockey skills as well. And because of the way it's designed with the type of nets that we put in there, you can actually adjust them a little bit, and it can help you with your shooting or different things if you wanted to do that, where you can slide the nets back if you're just looking to shoot. That way you're not chasing the puck or the ball all over the place. Hits the net, hits the backboard, that's it.
You mean to tell me you don't want people actually burning off some calories while they're shooting?
I think when they're shooting, they're burning off enough calories.
Yeah. So one of the other things I did speak with Henry Hinterstein, our landscape architect, about pertaining to Prime Park, to see if we can fit in the park envelope out there about possibly a pickleball court out there.
Yes, Henry and I have spoken on that, and we're trying to find the best spot to do it. We want to do it with as little disruption to trees as we can. We don't want to tear down 20 trees if we can avoid it. So we're kind of trying to find a spot where maybe there's a few trees that are older that are probably due to come down anyway that we can put it in. Plus, we also have to deal with the fact that there's a pipeline right through the middle of the park there, so that kind of limits us a little more. But we'll come up with something that'll work.
Well, one of the things is a lot of the neighborhood residents know that we repurposed the old tennis court, which became a basketball court, and then built a new tennis court right there, which seems to be working out pretty good.
Yeah, it does. I think that new tennis court does get a lot of use, and it's got its own little parking lot, so it's not its own little offshoot, but it's got its own area for the tennis players. And then the basketball court is closer to the main parking lot and where the fitness equipment is. So the design is very good there for people of different abilities and what they're going to do. Putting a pickleball court in somewhere close to the tennis court is what we're hoping to do. And I know Henry and I will get it figured out somehow.
Well, and that will be considered, I guess, one of the all-encompassing parks that we'd have in town, where the amount of amenities that you can use at the park.
Yeah, that will start to be more like what Quibbletown and Columbus are in terms of every different thing you can have in a park.
Now, we also have, not too far away from Prime Park, is another smaller park with assets, Hara Park. So what improvements are going to take place out there?
Hara Park, again, will get basketball upgrade. Hara's only got a half basketball court. And that was part of the reason for building the full court at Perrine, because it is kind of right around the corner. So put the full court there. We have the nice little half court for the neighborhood. It's a neighborhood park. And that'll get upgraded in, again, color-coded, basketball, rim if it's necessary, backboard. The tennis court will get a new net. I believe there's going to be some cleanup with the benches there. We have some of the parks still have the wooden and concrete benches.
And I know we're getting
going to put some nice new benches in
with the plastic powder coating.
Right, because less maintenance for us on them. You know, you're replacing the wood, painting the wood. This, you don't have to do the maintenance on it. It's there. It lasts. It should last the length of the time you're going to have the tennis or basketball court there.
And it also withstands the brutal punishment sometimes these kids have on the park equipment.
It does. You know, there's not a lot you can do to it. It's metal and powder coated. It's pretty tough.
And you know, and Director John Tierney and I were speaking about it. One of the big problems we do have in all the parks in all the areas is that vandalism in the parks.
It is. You know, you can tell when you've worked parks long enough. You can tell what's vandalism and what is just normal park usage.
Wear and tear.
You know, the vandalism is always going to stick out a little bit more. It's something you're going to encounter everywhere, so we are prepared how to deal with it. We fix things when they're broken. If there's graffiti, we send out the guys to go out and clean up the graffiti. And we try to keep everything as nice as we can, but you know, the vandalism does pop up.
But we are at a point now that where we are buying different types of equipment that withstand the pressure, which is actually helping out.
A lot of the newer equipment, it's easy to get graffiti off of because of the substances they're made from. You know, the old park and playground equipment, Mayor, that you and I grew up on, that stuff is long out the window. The newer stuff is painted or, again, has some type of a coating on it where you can either just paint over it with the same color, or you can take graffiti remover and the graffiti just wipes off, like you're cleaning your countertop. That's, you know, that's one of the nice things about having all new playground equipment. You have the newest technologies on them.
And that's the key. Now, out in Wynwood, you're jumping to the other side of 287 now, in the Wynwood section of town. We've done a lot of major renovations out there over the course of the last 2 years. What's going to be happening over there now?
Some parking upgrades over there. We'll do
So when you see parking, I know we did do the parking upgrades on the Elwood side.
Yeah, parking.
I believe it was.
Parking by the playground, tennis court, that was all upgraded.
Or was it, no, it was, excuse me, that was the Brentwood side. Brentwood side.
That was upgraded. The parking lot was redone, restriped. And that's because with the playground being right there, the tennis court's right there, and we added pickleball courts right there. So we knew that parking lot.
Which, by the way, for anybody who lives there, evidently that is very extremely popular from what I understand in that neighborhood.
Well, it was really popular while we had our Quibbletown courts under construction this past summer. Because everybody from Quibbletown was going over there to play.
Yeah.
And it was, you could go over there any point during the day and there were people playing.
Yeah.
So we're going to upgrade the parking lot on the other side now, which is closer to the softball field. And we're going to do some work on the walking path to make it, the walking path's been in there a considerable number of years.
That's the original
it needs
walking
some
path.
attention.
Yeah.
It's held up very well, but it's like anything else that's made out of blacktop, freeze thaws, get to it eventually. And that's going to get upgraded a little bit.
And I think there'll be obviously the upgrades of the handicap accessible parking stalls, and some of the big yew bushes have gotten too big from what they are for security purposes. When the police department's patrolling the area, they like to see a clear line of sight into the parks. So if there's somebody there when they shouldn't be at night, then they can see the searchlights.
Cut some of that down. Now the bushes along the homeowner property lines, we don't mind those going a little bigger, but the bushes coming into the park need to be maintained, so you're right, line of sight is there. And the handicap upgrades are important because, especially on that end of the park, somebody wants to get out and just use the path to walk on.
Use the bike path.
You got to be able to get onto it easier. It's similar to what we're doing on the streets, on the curbs and sidewalks, where we're putting in the access with the no-slip pad. You're going to see that same kind of stuff come into the parks as well, because it's going to make wheelchairs and things like that easier to get into the parks.
And that's that I can remember when I represented that area as a township council member, that when that park was retrofitted back in the 90s, there was a much big discussion about what type of equipment. But now there's been a generational changeover in that in the developments near there and in there. That originally they didn't want a basketball court installed, and then now there's been a sea change of more younger kids coming in now. They want that, and pickleball, which wasn't even thought about.
There was no pickleball then. A basketball court over there. Again, it's just about finding the right layout for it and putting it where it's not going to be bothersome to residents. And that's always our biggest concern. When we put something new in, we just want to make sure we're not going to cause the residents any issues out of it. We like to make it so they still can enjoy the park and not be overwhelmed with noise and activity.
Every once in a while, when the weather's nice on a Sunday, I'll drive the parks and get out and speak with people. That park, along with Suskin Park off of Haynes Avenue for the playground, actually has the highest slide in town, height-wise.
Yes, they're very similar playgrounds, and those slides they're up there in height. It's interesting to watch the kids that climb up there sometimes, and they get up there and realize how high they are.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're climbing back down, not sliding down.
Yeah.
Because it throws you a little bit. When you see it from the ground, it's one thing, but when you're actually on top of it.
Well, especially if you're a young child. But there are some daredevils, though.
More than a few, yes.
So that's one of the goods. Now, we don't have, I think we have something minor scheduled over at the Veterans Park, Possumtown Park.
Yeah, there's a couple of minor things we're going to do. Obviously, since Hurricane Ida, we have to replace the sign, although it is my understanding the sign was found finally.
Yeah.
So we're going to go retrieve it, but it definitely took some damage, so it's going to have to be replaced. A couple other little upgrades to the field itself. We're going to do some upgrades to the softball field there, just so when it does rain, the water kind of rolls off a little better and doesn't drag all the mix out with it.
Yeah. Now, we also are going to, at this point, we are going to be reconstructing 3rd Avenue, where the park is at that point. That's through the engineering department. Right. We're expected to be out to bid on that project, I think, within the next month, the month of March. And then I think that it's going to set the template up for when we go to renovate the parking area out there once the roadway's finished.
Yeah, once we get the final on the road, we can look at our parking areas and see how we're going to adjust them to increase parking over there for us. Right now, there's an adequate amount of parking, but when you get some of the bigger picnics in there on the weekends, you know, people are parking on the road, down in front of the residents' homes. We'd rather they can park in a bigger parking lot. And once the road construction is done, we'll be definitely able to see where we can add additional parking, even if we have to move some of it around a little bit more.
And I think it's part of the engineering design plan. It's going to be sidewalks on both sides, I believe, if I recall. I know definitely on the park side.
On the park side, for sure. It's all the way
I forgot
down.
whether it's going to be on the other side. So
Yeah. Park side all the way to Possumtown Road is a sidewalk.
that's correct.
I'm not as sure on the other
I'm
side.
not sure if it was on the other
I think
side
on the
or
other
not.
side it may end at the last residence.
The last residence. Yeah.
I believe it ends there because past that, I want to say is state of New Jersey property. For 287.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely going to be sidewalks in front of the park, which again, that'll be a nice feature for people in the neighborhood.
It will connect up
They can walk
the
the sidewalk
neighborhood to
down
safely.
and come to the park that way.
And if somebody's pushing a child in a stroller,
Right.
it'll be a lot safer,
Lot simpler
or
to
if
do
a
that.
wheelchair accessible.
Right.
It'll be that. And then, John, you're absolutely correct. If anybody who lives over in that area, when on a summer, when prior to the pandemic, when that park is in use for picnics, you can get some pretty big crowds out there.
Yeah, I mean, last summer we capped the number of people at picnics because we still weren't sure what was going on, and hopefully this summer we'll be able to raise that number a little bit. But when you get a full picnic there of 200, 250 people,
You need parking.
You need parking for a lot of cars.
Yeah. Now, I did get some people asked me because of all the dead trees that were taken down. One of the things that we've been doing going into some of our parks is that we've been looking at how healthy some of the trees are in our parks, and we've had a lot of problems with a lot of the ash trees that have the disease or the beetles that have been chewing, and we've been spending a lot of money taking down these trees that have been, they may look healthy, but they're hollowed out.
Yeah, they're hollow on the inside, yeah.
And the last thing we want is a tree during a storm to come down and injure somebody. So that's why we've been being proactive. But, we are, Henry Hinsenstein is out there, we're applying for grants to get some other trees, saplings to replace them. Yeah,
right now, Henry and I spoke about it last week or the week before. And he's got a good number of trees he's going to be planting in the parks this summer. Most of it is replacement of trees that we were forced to take down because of one issue or another. And these new trees, when they plant them, again, they're going to hold the soil. That's the biggest thing for a tree, especially in a lot of our parks that have water next to them. You need the tree to hold the soil in place. So they'll put those in, and it'll green our parks back up again. So further down on Possumtown, or Veterans Park, for lack of a better word, is that down by First Avenue, we did clear out some of the dead trees that were toppled for the last 25 years and were never cleaned out, and we're going to go in and finish that this year. But we're slowly going to repopulate it with the forest, with the trees in there. So you get a managed canopy, so to speak, out there where people go in and walk in an open space area. We're not going to have to worry about some dead limb dropping and hitting somebody. Right. That's that area of Possumtown Park. That's what we would call passive recreation. Yeah. Obviously, there's nothing in there. It's just people can walk through there, enjoy the trees, enjoy just being in nature over there. And we have a lot of parks like that. So if we jump across the street, we go a little further down. You eventually, off of Birch Run Drive, you'll come into down by Mountain Avenue. You'll come into Irishtown Park. So what are we planning to do out there, John? Again, Irishtown basketball and tennis courts will get some renovations, some upgrades. There's another basketball court that sees incredible amount of action out there. Yeah, if you want to go down there one night and try to get into a pickup game, be prepared to wait an hour or so. Yeah. Because it's always got a lot of kids playing there, and a lot of, I don't want to call anybody older, but some older individuals that still play with the kids, and they seem to have a lot of fun there. Yeah, when we have to actually shut that down to renovate it, those kids get these long looks on their face, like, well, how long? Every time I'm there, when's it going to be ready for us to get on and play? Yeah. And that's a good thing. That's what we want. But the renovations, again, it's the same. Color coat, new backboards, rims, if necessary. Tennis court will be done with new nets, new posts. Fencing over there was done a few years ago, so that's all in good shape. That was when the actual playground was renovated. Right. We did fencing and all over there. And then Henry and I have spoken on the baseball field. We're potentially considering putting the outfield fence back up and making it an enclosed field again. The reason all the years ago we took that fence down was because people were letting their dogs run in there. And because they could block off one entrance with a garbage can and stand at the other. And dogs were running around making a mess in there, and you'd be playing a baseball game. Next thing you know, you're picking up a ball. And
yeah, it is.
So what I think we're going to do is leave a couple of openings in the outfield. That way, again, if a ball gets hit over the fence, you can just go get it.
Okay.
And then people aren't going to be able to let their dogs just run around in there.
Yeah, people got to be cognizant of that. Now, I believe we're also doing the hockey rink over there.
The hockey rink there is getting done as well. That was the first one we put in, of this style hockey rink. And again, it served us well. It gets used not as much for hockey, but a lot more for people that just want to rollerblade and rollerblade around it. Or you'll see people actually in there just jogging around it like it's a jogging track.
Which it's not what it was meant for.
No, but
we just don't want people playing soccer or anything else.
Right, we don't want soccer or things like that in there.
Yeah.
People want to play hockey in there, street or roller hockey, rollerblade, like I said, walking around it. You know, that's not going to be a problem in there. Soccer, because it's not designed for soccer. The soccer ball hits the fence, it dents the fence, it tears up the nets. You know, it's not made for that. There's plenty of soccer fields in town people can play on.
Yes. Now, I think once that's finished, and I think then Henry's going to take a look at redoing that parking lot there possibly in 2023. And one of the things we're going to look at over there is possibly having a walkway connecting up from the roller hockey rink over to the other assets in the park.
Yeah.
Because you would basically be connecting up Mountain Avenue with Blackford Avenue.
Blackford, yeah. We're going to look to doing that. The way the back of the park by the baseball and hockey is set up, there's just enough space to put a nice walkway right through there. And it would come up right to the parking lot. And then again, it would pick up by the basketball court and could go to the other parking lot and then to the playground.
I mean, ultimately, that forested area there is actually a lot of, there's paper streets back in there, believe it or not, that are not part of the park. It is wet back there, part of the area. At some point, we'd like to get in there and grab all those dead trees out of there and try to be able to let people use that park as a more of a forested, like bird nature walk or something along that lines.
Yeah, again,
but we have to finish up that park doing the amenities before we go in and delve in that, because that's going to cost a lot of money to go in there and yank out all the dead trees and get something where you can have that set up.
Yeah, and when you're going in there and pulling out those trees, because the ground is wet, it takes a little bit more precise work to do those trees. It's not just going in and cutting trees down. Yeah. You have to use more specialized equipment to get in there and stabilize things to cut the trees down. I don't know if you remember this with Irishtown Park. Many years ago, there was actually a little stream that ran right through the middle of the park.
That's right, yeah.
Yep. And that's why that area has always kind of stayed a little wet, because between the stream and the wet areas behind the field. But the way we've, over the years, modified things, it's helped it a lot. And yeah, using that wooded area.
The drainage isn't as bad as what it used to be.
Not even close. Yeah. I can remember going over there, and you weren't going to play baseball in that field for 2 or 3 days after it rained. Yeah. Now, we can be on the field that night sometimes, because the drainage has improved so much. Which
is good, because that area of that park services a very large population of that neck of Piscataway, the Irishtown area, and because you have all the developments off of Birch Run Drive, because that's considered a mega park. Yeah. And so that's why we were talking about upgrading the parking over on Blackford Avenue, doing a walkway connecting up, and some other amenities over there. I mean, we do have some constraints with the water stream in there, but I think that would be a wonderful area where if we can have, back in the heavily wooded area, where we can have like a nature preserve walk, I think a lot of parents with young children would appreciate that.
Oh, I think they would as well. And we could do something similar that was done many years ago by a Boy Scout trying to become an Eagle Scout. Mm-hmm. He built a bunch of bat houses, and we put them up at Riverside and Possumtown. That's something you could put in there that, again, would help the area, would keep bugs.
Well,
down.
I'm not in favor of mosquitoes, because they don't vote. But anyway, all right, so that's pretty much what's going on in the Irish Town. So the last park, I think, is Newmarket Park. I think there was going to be some minor adjustments over there.
Minor things there. Some upgrades a little bit to the basketball court. Just changing out some things that have, worn out over the years. Tennis now to get replaced because it's, as it wears out, we try to replace them. We're going to look at some grading issues over there on the softball field because it seems to stay a little wet a little longer than it should. So we'll look at a couple things over there as well. And we've done a couple other upgrades there already.
Well, the playground plus the town reconstructed Cassuth Street.
Right.
Which I got to tell you, it's very nice now watching families actually use the sidewalks going to the park.
Yeah,
and it's a heck of a lot safer now.
Yeah, it's a real sidewalk, not a blacktop, crumbly
right.
path with all kinds of cracks and holes. Yeah, it is a lot nicer. And everybody, I happen to live over in that neighborhood. It's very easy for me to walk right down to the park on the sidewalk. It is definitely a gigantic improvement and gets more people using the parks.
Yeah, no, that I am great. And I think that takes it. And I know probably at some point we're going to have to talk with the folks that bought the old Newmarket School about we're going to have that fence replaced back there because
right.
I think that's got to be at least 50 years old, that fence, if not longer.
I know it was there when I played
older
on that
than I
field.
am because I remember when I was a little kid playing basketball in the old Newmarket Gym School. So,
yeah, that's something that is definitely long past its usefulness, and we don't need to put up another 6-foot fence there. Mm-hmm. The 4-foot fence is fine. You don't have to have that giant fence there anymore because it's unsightly most of the time. And the rest of the park only has a 4-foot fence around it. And then you just an occasional opening just so people that are working in those buildings can come out and enjoy the park during the day when they're on their lunch hour.
Yeah. The last park, which we're probably going to do renovations to in 2023, is New Durham Park. We were originally talking about doing it in this year, but after both you and Henry Hinterstein taking a look at what really needs to be done over in that park, you wanted to explore that further because of the drainage issues and everything else going on in the park.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with drainage over there, especially next to the tennis court. Tennis court sits up a little high, but then right next to it there's a drop-off that just is never dry. Middle of summer, it couldn't have rained for 3 weeks. They're still soft over there. So we need to look into the best way to alleviate that issue because there is a walking path through there, which is a wonderful path, but it's starting to sink in some spots because of the wet grounds under it. So we got to try to come up with a way to stabilize it a little more.
Yeah, and the problem is when that park was built in the 50s, that was like one of the, that development, the New Durham area, that was like basically housing when the soldiers came home from World War II. It was one of the first housing developments that went up, and they had that as a park, and there was not necessarily the proper drainage that if we built something today, we would make sure we'd have proper drainage.
Yeah, the design would be completely different if we did it today.
Yeah.
In fact, most people, if they don't live right in that area, don't even realize there's a park there.
No, the only people that really know it is the people that live that back up to the park.
Because there's a few access points into the park, but you don't know the park.
And there's no parking there unless you're parking on the street in front of somebody's house.
Right. It was an odd design for its time, even that you would build a park in like that. But the people that own those houses, of course, loved it because every one of them has a gate into the park from their backyard.
I know one of the things that we're going to do in one of the walkways that leads into the park, there's always been a telephone pole like in the way. So I'm going to have to talk to Henry about. We're going to have to schedule to try to get that moved out of there so you have a full access.
Right. Yeah. The location of that pole is right where the fences end.
Yeah.
So it's not about pulling a vehicle through there. You can't even generally sometimes push a stroller through there. Yeah. Because if stuff grows in the summer, it gets a little tight in there. Yeah.
So those are just some of the things that are gonna be happening in our park system, and that doesn't include the next phase of Columbus Park along Lakeview Avenue.
Right.
That's under architectural design right now, more down towards the Pepsi plant. But people will be seeing a lot of renovations done this year. And then the following year will be some of the more amenities expanding upon some of the current mid-sized parks where we want to put more fix the parking and the bike paths and things like that to connect up all the assets.
And put in, we've talked about in a couple spots, potentially putting in some fitness equipment in a couple other places.
Yes, I think we do have 2 spots now. We have Suskin Park and Prime Park for the fitness. Cause
they both have them, yes.
We're looking at another park or 2 to eventually put more fitness adult, which tends to be pretty popular now. People are actually using the equipment.
People, they definitely use it. I know one of the locations we've discussed was Day Park, potentially put one in there.
Because there's plenty of room there.
Plenty of space to do it there. And that's part of it. You've got to have the right amount of space to do something like that. So Day would obviously be a good location.
And Day Park's one of our mega parks, which has a lot of assets.
Right.
And also that's one of the ones where we're slowly going to design a multi-use path on the circumference of the park. So to be like maybe a mile in circumference jogging park out there.
Yeah, that's something that, again, it links up more of the neighborhoods now. They'll be having easier access to get there instead of walking all the way around. You'll be able to come kind of right into the park.
Well, the ironic part was going back almost 40 years ago, some of the developments that were built next to that park, there was easement access points to go into the park with the assumption that the town would eventually build a walkway around the whole circumference. So we're finally getting to that point after finishing up a lot of renovations that we're actually going to look in seriousness to try to start connecting up these pieces of the puzzle.
Right. Yeah, I can remember that when I was much younger playing baseball on that field, that there was areas where you thought, well, how come there's not a path there? Because it would make sense. And it just takes time, as everything does. And I'm happy to see that it's all happening now.
Now, and also before we close out this segment, you've also been working with to renovate some of the 2 cricket fields.
Yes, we're working on that. We have the cricket pitches off of Normandy Drive, which is actually still part of Possumtown Park. We call it the Normandy Drive Cricket Ground. We're just looking to level a couple things out over there and clean it up a little bit to get it ready for this year. And then we put in a pitch over at Quibbletown Park on the 2 softball fields. And we're putting down some new, it's actually very similar to a baseball infield mix, but it's going to be a little bit more clay in it so it stays harder. And we're going to put that in.
Yeah, because you don't want the pitch being mud. So.
Right, and with this clay, it'll be easier. It'll harden up so the ball bounces true off of it when they put their mat down for the ball to bounce. And it should improve the play and should improve the amount of teams that are going to want to play. Because I know for a fact that one of our teams was last year's champion. And they wanted to play the championship match here. And because of some of the issues at Quibbletown with weather, the ground was soft. Once we put this in, we won't have that issue when they play for the championship this year. They'll be able to play.
Well, that's good. I mean, ultimately, that the problem is with these cricket fields, they require a lot of room, more so than a regular football field, and the circumference of it. And I think that's the key, coming up with an area where you're going to have the circumference. Yeah,
it's the amount of space they need is a lot because the ball can basically be hit in any direction. So you have to have basically from your center point on the pitch, you're going out hundreds of feet. So you're as long as a football field and wider than a football field. We're fortunate that many years ago when some of these parks were laid out, we put fields back-to-back, softball fields and baseball fields, where we can do this now, where we can put a cricket pitch in the middle of it and it doesn't harm anything. So that's definitely an advantage we have, and that was good planning many years ago by former landscape architects, Henry as well, former recreation directors, when they thought about that, given all that space in there for things.
Well, I want to thank the Director of Recreation, John Tierney, for stopping on Piscataway, and now we're going to go on to our next segment. Well, it's my honor to be over here at Piscataway's own very museum, the Metlar Bodine House, and I'm actually here with, sitting on this historical couch with June Sadlowski, the Executive Director of the museum, along who's with us too is Hara Durkin, who's the Associate Director of the museum. So before we get into speaking about what people are going to see over the next 6 months out here, hopefully, Tell me about this couch that we're sitting on. I feel like I shouldn't be sitting on it. But anyway, tell us the backstory about the couch, who was involved with designing it, and also the significance of it.
Well, this sofa, Victorian sofa, was made in New Brunswick in 1853.
So it's well over 150 years old.
Right, and it was made by
170.
David Voorhees, who owned a furniture shop. And it was purchased at that time new. We don't have that absolutely confirmed, but we do believe it, by the family of Alice Jennings Archibald. Her family, there was at least one slave that we know from her family. She lived in New Brunswick for many years, and she was a graduate of Rutgers, the first African American to graduate with her master's from Rutgers or Douglas College in the 1930s. And she was a wonderful, wonderful person. We knew her well.
So she was one of the first to graduate with a master's, and Douglas College was founded, I believe, in 1918 or something like that.
Right.
If I recall.
Right.
Going on record. So that's very interesting that she was one of the first to come
Yes.
out, African American to come out with a master's degree, and that was unheard of even in the 30s.
Yes, it was. It
You know,
was.
sad, but it was unheard
Right.
of.
And to think, we knew her well, and when she passed away, this came up for purchase from her heirs, and we decided that we wanted to purchase it because it had not only the connection to the area as far as New Brunswick and it being made here, but also to that wonderful African American history.
No, absolutely. And speaking about history, one of the reasons why we're over here is because the museum, currently the township government, is out to bid on the next phase towards the addition. So June and Hara, why don't you talk a little bit about what people can expect, assuming that the bids come in okay, that the council's able to award that. What can we expect?
I would really defer that to June.
I think June.
She's more
I don't think June needs to look at architectural plans. I think she has it in her head.
It's in my head.
The bid specs and everything.
Well, one of the first things that is going to bid is a New Jersey Historic Trust grant, part of it. We, Hara and Jerris and I wrote the grant that was awarded from the trust, and it was for the landscaping. So the first thing that's going to be started, and this is what's going to bid now, is the landscaping on the front lawn and around the side of the kitchen
Okay,
side of the house.
so if you're coming on either north or south on River Road past there, then most of the work will be on the River Road side.
Right, on the River Road side. And it's also going to include a new burner downstairs because we're going to change to gas.
Okay.
We now have an oil burner, and the oil tank has to come out, and we'll include that. And I just asked Margaret if she could include, we have a problem on this stairwell with the plaster. Maybe it's a little job, and that might get done with that, but we're not sure. It may come from another grant. That's the start of it, and that's going to start, we hope, in April.
So ultimately, once that first phase is complete, we will then start another phase, I believe, for the excavation outside structural of an addition that the museum will be putting on to house a specific collection that is specific to Piscataway Township. And why don't you explain that very briefly?
We're going to have built, that's the next phase, is the construction of the Forever the Fourth Gallery. Because Piscataway is the home, or will be the home once it gets back here from our conservators, of an American treasure. The Ross Hall Wall was just given that title by the National Park Service as an American treasure. It's being conserved. It's from a mansion that used to be in Piscataway. where George Washington wrote the order for the very first Independence Day to be celebrated on the 4th of July.
So that's why we always do a hashtag first fourth
Yes.
on 4th of July
Yeah.
for Piscataway. So that's sort of like our signature
Yes.
thing, that the first 4th of July was really celebrated in
Yes.
Piscataway Township by decree
Yep.
of General
Yep.
Washington.
Yes, and then there was a big, huge celebration here along the river. I've often thought that Johnson's Park should be a national park, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, because this was an incredible, incredible event. And we had the research done to prove it, and we proved it to the National Trust that we have this beautiful, beautiful colonial wall that we're going to, believe it or not, we're going to hang it. And everyone in the museum world is very excited about this. You are going to be able to walk around it and see how it was constructed and learn about it. But the most important thing about that wall is that it's the only relic remaining from that incredible first 4th of July.
There you go. Now, Hara, very quickly, since you've been involved in this museum for a number of years, I mean, with the expansion for the collection and things what does that mean to you personally as somebody who's been involved for quite a long time here, volunteering as an associate curator here in Piscataway?
Well, I think there's so much history here, and I think once we are completely open, we will be able to bring the public in on this wonderful history that Piscataway has. I mean, it's just, people travel out of state. They go to Philadelphia, they'll go to New York, they'll go to Virginia. But we have so much here, I think, that people aren't even aware of. And what we really want to do is to let the public in. This really isn't a local history museum. We've always thought of it as a more of a regional history museum, simply because of the original land grant size, which was over 300 square miles. And
think about that. Just to put that in perspective, what Hara just said, 300 square miles, that's probably about almost 60 to 70% of the entire county of Middlesex County.
Yes.
Yeah. It went all the way out to the Sourland Mountains and practically down to Princetown, Princeton, and encompassed a huge portion of Somerset, just to give people an idea. And the fact that we're focusing on how transportation here, beginning with the Native Americans, the Lenape, our theme is from Indian Trail to interstate. And that is not to say that that's pejorative in any way, shape, or form. I mean, the indigenous people were here from thousands and thousands of years ago, and River Road was part of the Menacing Trail, which the Lenape used to get down to the shore, to get up to the mountains. And we found out recently that they even sailed up the coastline to New England, and either through portage or river, etc., they were able to go out to the Mississippi. And we know, and then they came back here, and we know that because of the wampum, the shells, and the other artifacts, the beads that they brought back with them. And they traded with other Native American tribes. And because of that, and once the colonists came, of course, they then created the Great Road up the Raritan. And Raritan Landing, when I was growing up here as a kid, I had no idea what Raritan Landing was. It seemed like this mystical town to me. And coming here for and learning about it, I mean, suddenly it began to make sense. And so the fact that this whole area began to grow simply because of transportation, and that is our theme, how transportation affected the socioeconomic growth of Piscataway. And we run through the centuries. So we're almost a capsule in historical time, if you will. And there's just so much to tell and so much to convey that I really hope that once, especially the wall, which is not flat in any way, shape, or form, it's this marvelous, beautiful piece of colonial architecture that is the last surviving link to this magnificent event that happened here in 1778. And to think that there were 11,000 soldiers here that encamped in the area, and Washington, with his senior aide-de-camp, including Alexander Hamilton, Baron von Steuben, Nathaniel Greene, the Marquis de Lafayette, they were all here when Washington held this magnificent ball to celebrate at the end of the troops, this organized celebration that took place along the banks of the Raritan. And it's just phenomenal. And then, of course, you've got the growth of the industries here and the dairies and the immigrants that all flock to this area. And that's really what we're all about. I mean, the mere fact that we have this wonderful, kind of at a loss for words here, but all of these people who have contributed so much to this town and continue to do so to this very day.
Well, I always like the fact that, when we talk on July 4th about how all the Continental Army here, so put it in perspective, Jersey Mike's Arena, where the Rutgers basketball teams play, only holds shy a little over 8,000 people. So that gives you in context how many people were here.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to thank both you, June, and you, Hara, for stopping by on Piscataway this month, just to give a short little snippet of what's going to be coming this year at the Metlar Bodine House Museum. And we look forward to hopefully having the construction done this year and proceeding into the next phase of the building. So it's long overdue, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. I want to thank everybody for watching the March on Piscataway, and for those folks of Irish descent, we have a special treat for you to close out the show. Our good friend Dominic will be singing for you.
Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses dying. It's you must go and I must bide. But call me back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. And all the flowers are falling. If I am dead, as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say, and Ave there for me, and I shall hear those soft you tread above me, and all my grave will water sweeter be. shall sleep in peace until you come.